Three.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, as the case might be. Welcome or welcome back if you're returning to our channel. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm a partner at Deloitte, and over the last number of years, I've had the pleasure of hosting this live webcast series of conversations we've been bringing to our technology leadership and technology enthusiasts audiences. Today's session is the episode 4 on our ongoing Tech Trends 2024 deep dives. And as many of you would know, Deloitte has been publishing our Tech Trends for the past 15 years. These are the trends that explore what leading organizations are doing in the space of enterprise technology. And over the past 3 episodes, we covered the first 3 trends for 2024. Today is a special day. We are going to talk about people. We're going to talk people and people's experiences. Today's session is going to be a deep dive into our trend number 4 around DevEx, or developer experience. I'm thrilled to be joined by 3 of my dear colleagues. First and foremost, Mike Bechtel, who is my brother from another mother, and one who carries the coolest title amongst all 457 plus thousand Deloitters in the world, our global chief futurist. And Michael and his team lead the development of Deloitte Tech Trends, amongst other cool things that they do. And to help us actually do a deeper dive and peek into the specific topic today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Sara Grove. Sara is leading our own tech talent transformation as part of the office of the CTO at Deloitte. So Sara, thank you very much for joining us. And Randeep Khaund. Randeep is actually Deloitte leader on the whole domain and topic of DevEx, developer experience. So thank you very much for your time. It's very lovely to see you all. And with that, Mike, I'm going to pass the baton over to you to lead us through the rest of the conversation.
All righty, buddy. Well, Dalibor, thank you, as always, for the kind intro. I never get through a Dalibor Petrovic introduction without blushing a little and smiling a lot. And I value our partnership deeply, sir.
Likewise. Thank you, sir.
You got it. And Sara and Randeep, thanks for joining here today. We're going to go a little bit momentarily amateur hour as I ham-handedly moved into the presentation chair. But can we see the glowing Rubik's Cube of the future? Can everybody verify that we're seeing our Tech Trends branding? Great. Okay. So T. Fourth verse, somewhat truncated from the first, right? We have been through the setup several times now. And for those joining for the first time, we can, I think, do a little less setup exposition here, because as Dalibor said so well, we've been at this for 15 years, and our job is to find patterns on the stone, signals in the noise. I like to say that Tech Trends ultimately serves to inoculate you as business leaders against snake oil, because if you think about it, in a world oversaturated with information, what matters most is our attention. And we strive to help direct your attention to those areas that endure and that matter most. Now, Dalibor also said that this trend today that we're going to talk about, developer experience, or DevEx, is about people. And that is the plain truth. Because those of you who joined us for the first few sessions, right, we were pretty techie, and we got techier as we went, right? We went from augmented and virtual reality, like, okay, cool, yeah, I've seen that on TV, to generative artificial intelligence, to, yeah, I see that every day at work. And then we got into last time this idea of next generation compute platforms, the idea of moving beyond the bit and into things like neuromorphic and quantum computing as a means of solving stickier and more wicked problems. And if you're anything like me, it's right around that third chapter where you're like, man, this stuff keeps getting harder, right? I thought I was done with calculus in college. Well, that's where these three trends come in. Because what we've seen is that simpler interfaces, smarter databases, and more performant or high-powered number crunching places, right? Those are the historical key to growth. Those are the ongoing key to hockey stick shaped innovation opportunities. By all means, right? I mean, honestly, those are the three swim lanes: simpler, smarter, stronger, book it. But as Deloitte, we have the privilege and responsibility of working with household name success stories like your organizations that are encumbered by their legacy, stature, status, and responsibility. What do I mean encumbered? Well, if you're two gals in a garage doing a startup, you can focus entirely on simpler, smarter, stronger, on elegant new interface plays, clever AI plays, right? White hot computation innovations. And make a lot of money. But if you're an existing enterprise with a rep to protect, you're grounded by three realities. One, the people that work as part of your organization, right? There's this famous Michael Porter quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And Dalibor and I sometimes like to say that, you know, operations eats it for lunch. But the real punchline is the people, the finance, the culture, the process side of your organization needs to be minded as you pursue what's next. You also got to look out for the baddies, right? There are folks who would seek to do us harm simply because we're big and we're known and we're, you know, successful. And so cyber risk and trust matter a ton. Always have, always will. And then finally, core modernization. You know, so many clients, understandably, just last night, I had a client ask me over dinner, he says, why do you have something definitionally old and legacy like core as part of your future-facing tech trends? And the reason is, you're not going to get very far unless you drag that old rust bucket into the future with you, right? And unless we nurture our rusty but trusty systems forward so that it can play nicely with all of our ambitions up in the blue sky zone. And so today's discussion is going to be focused on the people side, right? Today, we're going to be talking about this idea, right, that through the history of tech trends, through the history of IT leadership, IT management, IT governance, and IT structure, that the story over the last 10 years has been leading us to a point that this year we call developer experience. What is that? Well, I'm going to give us a high-level flyby, and then my friends and colleagues, Sara and Randeep, are going to add the crunch, the gravitas, the client stories, and the examples of how Deloitte itself is working on treating developers as a different kind of professional with different kinds of needs and different kinds of aspirations, and in turn, different kinds of rules, tools, and schools. So here's how it works. Most of you over the last 5-ish, 10-ish years are probably familiar with the term DevOps, right? The idea that the singular superstar, right, rock star developer had a better time and delivered a better result if they were supported by N, where N is an integer greater than 1, operations pros, right? People who tested the code, deployed the code, sustained the code, maintained the code. And the idea that it wasn't about singular superheroes, it was about a team of professionals that helped each other out and ensured that world-class rockstar code made it into production in a sustainable, maintainable way, right? That was really the DevOps story, right? I like to call it rules, tools, and schools that buttress singular genius and turn it into sustainable business. Well, here's the deal. Simply throwing more numbers at the problem doesn't solve the problem. What's the problem? The problem is, how do we not only attract and retain, but engage, right? And delight and support our developer communities so that they thrive, right? So that they feel like they're not just part of the organization, but a critical part of the organization, and feel like they're not being encumbered and slowed down by legacy processes that, frankly, aren't techie friendly. Well, enter an emerging movement called DevEx, or developer experience. The idea that techies tick differently, and the idea that in a world where every company is now a technology company, or at the very least, a technology-fueled company, in turn, a growing plurality, in some case majority, of our employees are techies. And again, techies tick differently. Let me give you some examples. We've heard for years that there's this race for talent, right? This like, we need to attract and retain top talent, and we need to find these mythical techies. Where are they? And one way to do that is to pay a king or queen's ransom. And yeah, you get their attention, you get them in, but the problem is, once they're in, if they're told they have to use old school tools, that they have to turn in TPS reports, if you remember the old movie Office Space, right? That they have to essentially drop everything that made them the attractive rock star they were, and throw on the notional suit and tie, and put down the laptop and pick up the briefcase, then it pulls the magic out of who they were meant to be. And so DevEx essentially says, it shouldn't be, we love you, you're perfect, now change. It should be, we love you, you're perfect, and we're creating a community that values your contributions, right? A developer-first community. I like to say a geek-first community, because to me, geek is the highest compliment ever, right? What do geeks want to do? They want to work on interesting problems. They want to solve those problems with interesting tools. They want a minimum of red tape, and they want to look at growth, not as moving up some proverbial corporate ladder. They want to look at growth as the ability to do more of what they love, which is work on even more interesting problems, have more agency, autonomy, and flex in their work. One of the clients we talked to this year on this trend, Citibank. And when we were talking with Citi, their CTO, he told us this amazing story. He said, we've got over 9,000 developers and techies, engineers. And 9,000, wow. He says, yeah, and one of the biggest things we hear is that they've come to low-key fear the annual promotion cycle. He said, what do you mean? What, they don't like money? Said, no, they like that part. Rather, they don't like the idea of having to be leveled out of what it is they do today, right? As I said earlier, to put down the laptop and pick up the briefcase. Many of us know this dynamic in sales, right? World-class salespeople don't necessarily make for world-class sales managers, right? It's a different archetype. It's a different breed. And so too it is with techies. And so what Citibank did is they said, listen, we're going to reconceive the rules, tools, and schools around elevation for our developers. And specifically what they did was they said, if you are a super high-performing, high-level, highly rated developer, you don't go up, you get the option to go out. More agency, more autonomy in choosing your projects, the ability to dabble in multiple things, to spread your wings, right? Not stretch yourself too thin. And what they found at Citibank is that's making all the difference. Because engineers can go to Citibank knowing that success will be rewarded with what? Even cooler engineering opportunities, right? That's the stuff. In the case of CarMax over here, a very interesting story about simply changing measures and metrics to reward product excellence, process excellence, as opposed to traditional metrics. What you tend to find is suddenly engineers feel like they're working towards the right outcomes aligned on metrics and principles that matter to world-class engineering, as opposed to orthodoxies that feel like they were from, a prior age. Well, taken together, it's about platforms, it's about tools, right? It's about culture and way of working, meetings, getting beyond just notional concepts like agile and into, no, we're going to work in these ways, and we're going to create value together in these ways, because this is what makes the most sense for techies, right? And then again, that talent side, it's about rewarding great work with more great work, not with the threat of taking it away. Now, listen, rather than me dive into these, we've got Sara and Randeep here who are going to make this real. They're going to make it crunchy. And, for starters, Randeep, maybe over to you, brother. What are we really seeing and doing in market? And feel free to clean up all the messes that I've made in the introductory articulation of this important movement.
No, Mike, that was a great setup and great intro. Thank you for teeing everything up, and some great client stories right there. And you touched on some of this. I want to go a little bit deeper into why clients are talking about it. Why is the industry talking about developer experience? Why now? And why is it important? But before I go there, just wanted to acknowledge that developers or software development as a profession has existed for a while, and developers have been operating in enterprises, interacting with tools and platforms, or in your word, Mike, the rules, tools, and schools, right? But what has happened that has raised this concept to the next level, where everyone's talking about it, and it's an important priority. Number one, the impact of developers on the bottom line of companies have radically transformed, right? They're making a big impact in the bottom line of a business. Now, I would like to illustrate that with an industry that's not generally tech forward, healthcare or healthcare providers, industry where I've spent a lot of time. Over the last 20 years, they have initiated and kind of gone through the whole paper to digital transformation, more in their clinical operations space. And then all of that has been accelerated with digital and AI, creating new patient and stakeholder experiences. Now, for you to create products and services that create those experiences, reinvent your care delivery model and do all these innovative things that the market is asking for, that your consumers are asking for, your patients are asking for, you need an engine of software development that drives that. And then that engine, that's the impact of that engine into your bottom line is far greater than it was probably a couple of decades ago. So developers as a population are more important, and their impact to the bottom line. But on the other hand, the life of developers are getting more and more complex. I started my software development career a couple of decades ago, and I've seen that transition happen. 20 years ago, doing Java software development was not as complicated as how it is in the world of cloud and DevOps and an entire ecosystem of 100+ SaaS tools that you have to interact with. And it's not just the interaction with those tools, but the processes that those tools enforce or rather require of you to participate and complete. So when you look at all of that, the collective, developers are spending based on our compiled research, and I would encourage everyone to do a deep read of the Tech Trends report and go through the report. We have cited all the references. You'll see developers are spending about 30 to 40% of their time, only about 30 to 40% of their time doing actual software development, which has a real impact on the bottom line. Everything else that surrounds it, is friction points and your interaction with the rest of the tools and platforms. Now, interestingly, for one of our financial services client, we knew going in, we had an hypothesis that the experience for developers as they start new projects is very, it's full of friction points. So we wanted to quantify it, and we noticed that they were spending about 6 to 8 weeks just starting a new project, and that's just illustrates what's contributing to that 50 to 60% number where developers are spending time outside of this. So bottom line, developers' impact on the bottom line is big, and their world is getting more and more complex. Now, why is it important? Why should we care about developer experience? Companies that are solving for developer experience and creating these better developer experiences are driving much greater revenue, up to 60% more. And it makes sense. If you just go down the logical path, if your majority of your products or services are tech enabled or tech products, then a better productive developer population will drive better and faster product delivery at lower cost, which has a direct impact on your bottom line. And again,
it's super intuitive.
Yeah.
Randeep, not to take you off your flow, but it's intuitive. But when you put numbers and researched measurements to it like that, it blows your mind.
It does, doesn't it?
And $1 get $1.60 back. Wow.
And it's not always obvious when you just think about it. Like, okay, why is developer experience? And that's why developer experience is increasingly a C-level conversation. In fact, we were just preparing for a conversation with the CFO of a tech company, really looking at their driving more productivity out of their software development engine, considering them understanding all the underlying financial levers and how that improvement will drive bottom line growth. So from a business standpoint, this has a very high priority. And in addition to that, over the last decade, developer tools, DevOps, have advanced at breakneck speed. And if that was not enough, we added Gen AI and its impact on software development, which has completely upended the software development lifecycle model. All our clients are trying to figure out how do we incorporate not just all these other advancements to drive better productivity, but also incorporate Gen AI into that SDLC lifecycle and enhance overall developers' experience. So when you think about all of this, this is top of mind. We have put in our Tech Trends report, but it's not just us. If you look around the industry and other analyst population, Gartner's saying that, and a lot of others are saying that a lot of our clients, 75% of from a recent report, 75% of tech executives said that developer experience is top of mind for them. And I've actually seen them being quoted, and I've seen slides from clients where they're calling out developer experience as one of their number one tech priorities.
Wow.
So now, Mike, you're saying something.
No, I'm just so engaged by your point here that to me, one of the big takeaways, what I'm learning from you here in real time, Randeep, is the clarity with which, investment into friction reduction for techies comes out as not just revenue, but earnings. I mean, and again, notionally, it makes sense, right? Like efficiency is a good call. Engaged employees are a good call. But here's the math, folks. If you increase efficiency, you'll increase engagement and you'll make money. And as a former venture capitalist, I don't know that business cases get much clearer than this.
And I love that you brought up the business case comment. And this is one of the other shifts that we're seeing with this approach. Clients who are organizations that are doing it better, they're taking this whole productized UX user experience driven approach and applying it internally. What that means is you're looking at all your different personas of developers within your organization, trying to understand and acknowledge that each persona's journey and their interaction is different, right? A data scientist will have a different experience than a software engineer.
Right.
Acknowledging that, but also taking a lot of learnings and analysis of pain points to quantify it and build that business case where your platform investments are self-funding, right? So to your point, the venture capitalist mindset, show me how you're going to, get from red to green, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which is particularly compelling as Dalibor opened us up. The people trend, right? People always love the people trend because we're people. But to see that the people trend has a black and white business case in this instance is, I think, really, particularly compelling.
Yeah. So now I think, we made the point that developer experience is important, but how do you create that world-class developer experience? In our experience, what we have realized, and this is codified in our approach, it takes a multidisciplinary approach. It's not just a platform and tools thing. It's a multidisciplinary approach across talent experience, platforms and tools, and ways of working and flow. This point of view has been developed both from our internal experience, and we are practicing this on a day-to-day basis. Sara is going to talk about this a little bit more towards the end of this. But we're also externally refining this as we build this with our clients and refine this with our clients. And we're seeing that these are not things operating in silo, they're mutually reinforcing each other. So you cannot think of one without the other. And interestingly, I was having a conversation with somebody who leads developer experience at a life sciences company recently, and they're taking a very similar approach. And I was contrasting that conversation with another conversation that I had where the initiative was primarily driven from a technology organization without the talent experience lens taken into consideration. It was a light bulb moment for them. It's like, of course it makes sense, right? And that's a lot of times good or bad. Organizational structures, silos, you don't always think about things outside of your own world, but when you think about the holistic developer experience, you have to take the talent experience into consideration. Were you saying something, Mike?
No, well,
right.
Grunting in agreement and engagement, because, but you're right. Like, here's what I was thinking of, Randeep and Sara as well. Like, there's been so much oxygen spent on these seemingly unprecedented magical tools this year, right? Gen AI, package, software. And none of it's worth a lick unless it's used by, mindful, capable, engaged, constructive humans. And so I could see that. That's kind of why I reacted the way I did. I could see how you could be pretty far along in the development planning before you actually think about the folks doing the development, particularly in this 2024 moment.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's the realization, and that's the broader point. Now, let's do a little bit of a double click here, right? So when we talk about talent experience, let's start there. We're looking at how do you build and nurture that community and culture amongst the engineering population? How do you create capabilities that drive continuous learning? And how is your talent organization focusing on your developer population and understanding that their career progression and development needs are different? They're different population, their rewards and recognition, career models, career progression will differ from the rest of your employee personas. And you have to take that into consideration when you're creating these strategies, right? In addition, when you think about community and culture, there are a lot of things like, are you driving tech-driven events, building tech-focused communities within your organization? That's building that relationship and collaboration within different engineering communities and creating that sense of culture of being in a technology firm or a company that appreciates and understands the engineering population and caters to their needs. And then more tactically, when clients are starting, like, okay, we need to focus on community and culture, a lot of our clients are also focusing on this whole idea of inner source. How do you get team A and team B that are probably building similar things to collaborate and build common assets? Now, it's not just about building common assets and common capabilities that could be reused. It's also about breaking down those silos and driving collaboration across different groups. And that's about the engineering culture. And that's what drives better developer experience. And then finally, like from a continuous learning standpoint, there are a lot of things, a lot of things that companies can do, and they're already doing. But how do you go beyond the traditional modalities and learning pathways and look at things like hackathons and open source contributions and engaging with an outside developer community, or nurturing different modalities beyond just trainings and certification for learning, and how do you continue to fund, nurture, and grow that. As that evolves, that creates that different talent experience. And this is also a talent strategy for a lot of companies, and a large financial services company that I've been working with, and helped them launch their developer experience journey. One of their goals to embark on this journey was to become a more attractive place for engineering talent. They were operating in a very tough talent market. So how do you attract the talent? You build that better developer experience, word spreads, and that feeds into your better talent experience and better talent acquisition success. Next is platforms and tools. From a platforms and tools standpoint, and I'm not going to go too much into it, this is the place where a lot of our clients start, right? From an architecture standpoint, are you creating easy to consume architecture standards that help developers reuse capabilities, but build resilient and scalable systems in a standardized way and in a fast way? They're getting started quickly. Access to different measurement tools, not just measuring the performance of your technology capabilities and products that you're building and deploying, things like observability, usage metrics, and those are standard, but also, are you able to measure the productivity of developers and the satisfaction of developers to get a better understanding of that holistic developer experience? And enablement tools, that's a place where a lot of our clients start. Like, hey, we're solving for DevEx, let's build a golden path with a developer portal and a cloud, defined IDE. That's great, right? That's a place to start, because that's going to, that's where the business case is built. It's easy to build that business case. You get momentum, you start there. It's also trendy. People build skills, and all those things are great. Like, so if you're solving a problem, you're building skills, and you're doing something cool, you're happy, that's great. And it's a good place to start. Yeah, and then finally, ways of working and flow. And I think these are more foundational things. How are you accelerating that inner loop of developers as they're building software? Are you creating a culture where developers and development teams have full end-to-end service ownership from the product inception till deployment? They have full ownership within that, both through process, enablement, and tools. And finally, DevSecOps. This, obviously, Mike, you pointed out, this is progression from DevOps to DevEx in the engineering mindset shift. But here, again, applying that UX-driven principles and the DevEx flavor into your traditional workflow management and DevSecOps, are you building things that cater to different developer personas? One thing that I constantly see with clients, like core platform engineering teams that build DevOps capabilities, they're more attuned to building for software engineering population. And when you have to cater to, say, machine learning engineers or data scientists, those flows, those ways of working are slightly different. Are you taking a one-size-fits-all approach that meets your compliance criteria? Because, hey, I have built this end-to-end flow that helps me meet my compliance requirement, but the experience is really degraded for data scientists because it was not designed for it, for data scientists. Are you making that adjustment? So, all in all, this is the broader framework that we're talking about. We're consistently talking to clients about it. Our clients are building relationships from technology towards talent to look at developer experience more holistically. Some organizations are also building tech-focused groups within their technology organization to bring a little bit more focus into it in collaboration with HR. One of our financial services clients, where we're helping them set that up, considering the deep focus that you need from an engineering talent standpoint. So, but we've talked about all this. I wanted to pass this on to Sara right now, also for her to walk us through how we are applying this internally. It's not just with our clients, we're also applying this internally. So Sara, take it away.
Thanks, Randeep. Much to your point, Deloitte is another case study in the market as we continue to invest heavily in and grow our own engineering capabilities. And we are using the same framework ourselves to drive a holistic approach to investments in and transformations around our developer community. As an organization with tens of thousands of developers, architects, and engineers, it's also a business imperative of ours to not only continue to evolve our methods and tools, but also to better understand, adapt, and serve the unique talent experience needs of our developers. And one of the first priorities for us as a business and as leaders of an engineering organization was to make sure we had heard from our engineers themselves. It sounds simple and can oftentimes be overlooked due to generalization. Mike, Randeep, both your points of known challenges, pain points, areas of friction. We feel like we understand the experience of our engineers and make a lot of assumptions about it. But it's really essential to make sure that you give all of your engineers a voice in the room and gut check against your own perceptions or biases of what you feel this cohort wants or needs. One way in which we as Deloitte did this was to anonymously survey almost 20,000 of our engineers to better understand which of these capabilities are most important to them, where they may be experiencing challenges and areas of friction today, and to help crowdsource ideas for how to better build connectivity and community across different engineering cohorts and personas. We're using these inputs alongside market research and insights and best practices from some of our recent acquisitions of leading software engineering and digital product development companies like Hashden and Giant Machines to shape and prioritize our roadmap across all of these developer experience capabilities. Keyword here is across. As Randeep mentioned, there's a reason this is visually represented as a Venn diagram. Each of these capabilities are heavily interconnected and interdependent. Similar to the greater value offered from using blended metrics and measurements, you will have a more impactful and thoughtful approach to transformation when you're using a more holistic mindset. One way that this manifests is in evolving our way of developing to be more Gen AI enabled. Tactically, you have the questions like, what tools are we going to adopt? How do they integrate into existing development platforms and processes? How does this reshift our focus to more complex thinking and coding challenges? And how do we rapidly upskill our developers and transform our backlog to reflect that shift? How do we as leaders effectively communicate and set expectations with this community around potential risks or exposures to make sure that we're using new tech in a responsible and ethical manner that maintains trust? From a platform perspective, we're being intentional and strategic about bringing tools together into a single developer platform to help maximize the time spent on actual code development. Randeep, to your data point on such a small portion, 30 to 40% of time that an average developer spends coding, that we want to maximize the time they spend on actual code development and minimize areas of churn, rather than be identifying and provisioning tools for individuals on an individual basis.
Right.
Especially to your point, Randeep, in the financial services case studies, same for us, from a day one point of view, whether it's a new hire to the firm or whether it's day one of a new project, we want day one to be the start of productivity and not the start of a 2, 4, 6 week upskilling process.
Right. What do you mean you guys don't use XYZ? Where do I find ABC? Oh,
Exactly.
Man. You're calling up old traumas in my developer history, Sarah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And another, coming around the whole circle again is the focus for us on developing an engaged, inclusive, satisfied community of engineers that are not interested in traditional modes of communication, collaboration, like unmasked newsletters for updates, for example. So we need to evaluate different tools, channels, and mediums for connection. One example that we use in Deloitte is our Tech Guild communities. We provide domain-focused communities for practitioners of all levels and proficiency to join, connect, and learn about new technologies. They incorporate community elements alongside immersive learning with, Randeep, to your point, hands-on opportunities through hackathons and local events. And we're continuing to evaluate what developers and engineers are looking for in their career, from new methods of recognition to new models of career progression, evolving sets of expectations and aspirations, technical mentorship and coaching. And at the core of all of these transformations is a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and bringing that value through everything we do as a community and as a firm. So altogether, when we think about this DevEx philosophy, not only for Deloitte, but for the market and for our clients, it's important to recognize that this is a unique cohort of professionals with very distinct needs and desires that are stretching well beyond the limits of traditional workplace expectations, benefit models, and cultural norms. And to both of your points, with every company becoming a tech company, what used to be an interesting case study that would just manifest in the tech and startup industry, this is now a business imperative for all organizations. And we as Deloitte are excited to be walking alongside our clients on this journey and taking all of our lessons learned and best practices from our own Deloitte engineering community to them. And with that, Mike, I'll transition back over to you so we can dig into discussion and Q&A.
Yeah. Well, Sara, that was awesome. And Randeep, tip of the hat to you as well. Awesome squared, both of you. And there's so much heft here and so much detail. I mean, that was one of the things I think that surprised me in this world was this wasn't like a high level platitude of like, like techies need to be looked after. No, this is like a quantified business-led initiative to drive more efficiency, effectiveness, and engagement.
Yeah.
And so I'm just grateful for you adding so much, meat to the bone, as it were.
And I wanted to add to that, Mike. Sometimes I say this to my clients. It's more than ping pong tables in the break room and free soda.
Right.
Right.
Right, because that's what you think of. You're like DevEx.
Yeah.
What?
Oh yeah, experience, like
Yeah.
But yeah, when you get to that level of depth where Sara was talking about, how do you drive DEI and purpose connected to their experience and the sense of community,
right?
That kind of stuff is hard. And again, recalling your quote from Michael Porter, culture does eat strategy for breakfast, and that's where it's really, really difficult. So acknowledging that talent experience part of it is extremely important. And I think that's one of the, I would say, like the DevOps movement drove the larger software engineering world much further along in terms of efficiency and speed to market, all of that. It's sometimes conversations are rehashed, reframed, and brought back up because it's nothing wrong with the earlier movement. It's just an addition and continuous enhancement. That's where we are in the industry in terms of adoption and maturity and growth and all of that, right?
I'm just deeply grateful that the market has resisted the temptation to call this DevSec culture ups. because we were already dealing with some of the worst nomenclature in my career, but we're back. Folks in chat or Q&A, please feel free to ask away anything you have for Sara or Randeep or me. A question that I might have for the two of you, Sara, maybe I'll address this to you. When you talked about Deloitte walking this journey with our clients, I'm old enough to remember a series of TV commercials in the 1980s. There was this guy, Cy Sperling, and he was the president of something called the Hair Club for Men. And now I think it's just called Hair Club. It's for everybody. but he would end the commercials. He'd say, and I'm not only the owner, I'm a client. And he'd show a picture of himself before he had a hairpiece. The punchline being, did we at Deloitte find that this was important to us, and therefore we realized it could also be important to our clients, or is it the other way around, that it was important to our clients and it dawned on us like, whoa, we're living this too? Just curious to hear the origin story, the chicken and the egg, if you will, around our own commitment to this, because I know it's a huge deal and central to so much of what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's definitely a chicken or egg question, Mike. I think it's very much so just the momentum in the market and in the industry where we as a firm have become increasingly tech focused over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And as part of that, are constantly challenging ourselves around what's next, like what are our clients asking for? What will they need, much to the point of Tech Trends report, in 12, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years down the road?
Right.
And as we anticipate that, we reflect on our own ability to lead in the market and deliver for our clients' needs and bring a perspective that matters. And that's where we're saying this is something we need to invest heavily in as well, not only just for because we should, it's a thing you should do, because it's a thing that is important for our business, or our clients are asking for, but also, quite frankly, we're as a business too, Randeep's points around bottom lines and earnings, that's very real for us as well. And so the better, faster ways that we can deliver for our clients not only helps to make an impact for their bottom line, but for ours. And the way they're competing for talent, so are we. And we want to be a top talent destination. And in order to do that, we need to define the ways that we have a talent experience, the tools needed for developers, and that we're presenting them with a way to work in an innovative space that gives them autonomy and flexibility. And so it's been very much a chicken or egg, but really loving the cyclical aspect of it in conversations amongst our teams and cohorts of engineers and our clients.
I mean, yeah, there's always like, you always feel better when you can look your stakeholders in the eye and say, yeah, we believe in this so much that we live it too, right? Like we would do this for our own family, and we are. A question from Colin in the Q&A, the chat, and keep them coming, gang. We have several. What are some strategies for doing this in a unionized environment? So Randeep, I'm hunching you might have maybe some lived experience or adjacent experience here, right? When the red tape prevails, exactly how many scissors can you pull out here?
So I think and I was looking at that question and I was reflecting on it as Sara was talking through it.
Hoping I didn't ask it. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I think one thing I did want to acknowledge, and I've been following this just broadly across the industry, I think we have to acknowledge that it is a fairly niche use case in terms of unionized software development, and it's like, well, whatever your opinion is, that's the reality. But to your point, Mike, what are the constraints in a unionized environment, and how does it compare to a regulated industry, right? I think similar challenges will exist where technology organizations getting support for initiatives that they need to drive. How do they get that support for those initiatives? I think it really comes with the business case for it, right? So understanding where are the friction points in that end-to-end journey, and how do you quantify those and articulate the impact of solving for them, both qualitatively, but also show the numbers behind the scenes that, hey, these things will pay for itself with some upfront investment over a 3-year, 4-year, break-even period. So I think that makes the conversation very compelling, and helps you raise that to the C-level conversation and get that top-down support to drive some of these initiatives, right? And then again, connecting that to the broader business outcomes, solving for that, the developer population will help drive I think those are strategies that we have seen being effective in regulated industries.
I've seen a similar pattern, not with this specifically, but with other sort of innovative or new ways of working in regulated or unionized industries, namely challenges to orthodoxy are often seen as regression to like anarchy. Like, we have rules for a reason. What do you mean you don't want the rules? And it's like, no. We value the rules. We think we need new and improved rules.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's, and I don't want to say sleight of hand because I respect regulations. They're there for a reason. But sometimes it's a framing thing of saying, we're not undoing rules. We're improving, right? We're building a new and improved ways of working. And then I think the standard bearers find themselves less reactionary and a little more constructive with you.
And I think, Mike, too, the cultural aspects, just I think overall, generationally, things as it shifts, but the demand for transparency and understanding, where to your point, everyone, we agreed there should be rules, there should be guardrails, but that there's an increasing level of expectation for a need for change management and communication along the way. That, when a new rule is in place that may seem antithetical to how someone has worked at another company in an industry, or, how it's been for 10 years.
Right.
People deserve an explanation and deserve to be brought along the journey as professionals and contributors in an organization. And so it's really like, how do we best communicate back to our cohort and our engineering base to say, here's why we're making this decision. We, embarked on it in a thoughtful manner. And these are the implications for our business of, following or not following, whether it's productivity and performance versus risk and exposure. That in general helps also to create an environment where everyone, performs and feels a sense of belonging, that they're part of the team and they have a role to play.
Isn't that it though? I mean, it's so real, right? Like, I think everybody appreciates straight, candid talk, but probably techies extra, right? Like, developer culture doesn't do so well with obfuscation, information privilege, things like that. And so that's a real eye opener. Thank you, Sarah. It's Doug. So Doug asks, thank you, Doug. Where do the new AI code builders, but not limited to things like Codex, fit to improve DevEx while incorporating organizational coding standards? So shades of my earlier, anarchy question, like when you get a magical robot that spits out whatever it wants, how do you get that to play within the color within the lines, as it were? Maybe Randeep, whoever wants to take that one, go for it.
I can take a crack at it and get started, because this is something that I've been spending a lot of time talking to clients about, but also introspecting and exploring what's happening in the market. First, I want to say that the promise is real. I've seen this in action. But I think it's worth tempering our expectations in terms of what it's going to do and what it's going to do in the immediate and near future versus what its potential is in the long term. I'm not very good at estimating those things, like whether it's going to happen in 3 years. I think, Mike, that's what you do as our chief futurist.
Right, yeah.
But I'll tell you what's real in the current context. A lot of our clients, including us as Deloitte, as we are working with our clients, we're building plugins and tools and capabilities around Codex and calling on to Codex or any other LLM for that matter, to serve different personas within the entire SDLC lifecycle, not just software engineers, but the rest of the personas. And we're doing this in a way that's sitting in clients' environments, learning their existing organizational standards, building almost like LLM type systems, and feeding that into their SDLC lifecycle through, whether it's in your IDE through plugins, whether it's with a plugin in Jira or any of the upstream work management tools, bringing it into the inner loop of developers but also kind of training. It's a loaded word, training them in the context of a client's environment with, like a RAG type model, if you will, not quite, but just moving towards that model. But the idea is, yes, it's impacting developer experience, especially for routine tasks like creation of test cases, or you need to do a version upgrade or something, things like that, which are very mundane. It's fitting really nicely. And then now you can kind of train and prompt it in a way that it's doing it with your organizational standards, right? So I think that's where the real impact is.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, we're doing it, and the impact of this would be pretty great.
It's pretty swell. I mean, yeah, that automation waterline kind of slowly, well, not so slowly lately, but steadily coming up and allowing us to put our precious human cycles on higher order things. That excites me. Speaking of exciting, I don't ask this in a softball way. So I don't want to end with, like saccharine sunshine, but like truly, like, what gets you guys fired up about this? Like, why are some of, what makes you most excited about this as kind of the next chapter in the tech team management playbook, right? This next era. I would dare simply say, I love the idea that we're recognizing that increasingly techies are first-class citizens, and that they're not to be thought of as an outgroup of those people. Because, I've been in board meetings, right? One of my favorite board stories is when a CIO looked to me, he said, when they talk about how they don't get tech, it's funny. But if I talked about how I didn't get legal and finance, it would be a career limiting move. And I thought that shone such a light on like techies as second-class citizens, right? Like all the way up. And so for me, what excites me about this is like, no, like techies, like first class, maybe central citizens, and let's build HR standards around them. How about you, Sara? Like what gets you out of the bed and excited about this?
I'll do two things really quickly. One, as someone who has worked very closely with developers and engineers, and I don't think I would be so bold as to say I really am one, but am an ally and a big fan. This is something that is really important to solve for. And just as a teammate and as a leader, all the metrics and data we had today, I'm so excited for the upside and the growth that will come from being able to have engineers and developers spend more of their time doing the work they want to do, finding new problems to solve, and thinking about the more complex challenges that are out there. The other piece is, I think, just seeing how this can change the overall culture of an organization. I think in the tech space, the fail fast mindset of let's try something new, let's see if it works. If it doesn't, let's move on. I'm excited to have that permeate even further and to get everyone more comfortable with that, because I think that is a mindset so essential to maintaining an innovative and agile and dynamic business that will be wonderful to see.
I'll just add one thing to that. With both the advancement of all the capabilities and focus on DevEx and AI injected into it, Gen AI injected into it, it's like the Gutenberg moment, right? How do you driving that productivity forward? And we have an opportunity to pay down the technical debt that's on society across all these systems that impacts people's lives. I think that's exciting over the next decade to 20 years.
Randeep, that was the most poetic imaginable close. I want to hear like an anthem, not any one country, but like a global anthem. You're right. I mean, what a great.
I'll be like George Costanza. I'm gonna exit right now.
Well, Randeep and Sara, literally couldn't do this without both of your leadership. Incredible insights. Thank you to both of you and to our cast of many dozens who joined us today. Thank you for your precious time and attention. We'll be back next time in 2 weeks with Dalibor talking about, let me work my way around the circle, reality defense, protecting truth in an age of synthetic media. So for all you cyber fans or foes, feel free to join us. But until then, thank you kindly for joining and grateful for your being here.